Hi everybody, today I'd like to talk to you about how to find an outlier, how to use the 5-number summary, how to create a modified box and whisker graph. So outliers, usually they're unusual points, they stick out, they're not with the group. It seems like it doesn't really go with the flow, so sometimes they're kind of obvious because you can see it, but sometimes it would be nice to be less arbitrary and actually do a mathematical test for one. And we can test for an outlier mathematically. And so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start with univariate data. I'm going to just start with some x variable. And so here are my values. And today I'm not using anything with context, so I don't really have any units here. But I do have ordered data. And I'm going to create a very simple graph, probably a dot plot, make my number line first, and throw up where the data is, just so I can see visually, might I have an outlier? And it does look like maybe I have two, maybe -4 and 12 are both outliers. So they both certainly look like they're far away from the pack. 12 much more so than -4. -4 is kind of close to the pack. So again, this is a great idea to have a mathematical test for something like this. So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at the 5-number summary, which starts with ordered data. So if your data is not ordered, please order it first. And now we need 5 values. We need a low, we need a Q1, a Q2, a Q3, and a high. And the low is always the low, and the high is always the high, no matter if it's an outlier or not. And the Q1, Q2, Q3, those stand for quartiles. So I'm going to find the median, which is actually Q2. And since this number of data here is even, I'm not actually going to fall on a value. I fall between the two ones there. I go in 6 and then I go out 6. So in between 1 and 1 is still 1. So I averaged those two values and I still get 1. And then I'm going to find the median on the left and the median on the right. And so this time I actually fall on the left side on 0 because I have 5 values. And then on the right, I'm going to fall on 3. And so I have 0 for Q1 and I have 3 for Q3. And so now I have my 5-number summary. And so 10 values. Sorry, I thought I had 12 values. So I have 10 values here. And the next thing I'm going to do is find IQR. So IQR is interquartile range, and that's just Q3 minus Q1. And so it's like a range, but a range of the interquartiles. And so I'm just going to subtract those two values, and I get 3. So the IQR is a nice way to express spread. So if somebody wants to talk about the middle of the data or the center of the data, they would use the median. And then if they wanted to pair that with a measure of spread, they would use IQR. So notice my interquartile range is 3, meaning that it's not very spread out, so a range of 3 is pretty small. So next, I'm going to take the IQR times 1.5. Always we use 1.5, just universally the number that we use, and we get 4.5. And this is the value. It has no name, and we like to take that value, and sometimes I just set it equal to x, and then I add it to Q3 and subtract it from Q1. And those create essentially boundary values. So I have 2 boundary values here, 7.5 and -4.5. And those are important because those are where I set the boundaries where anything outside of those values, either to the right or to the left of the smaller one or the right of the bigger one, those would be actually deemed outliers. And so I'm going to recap here with my original data set. Okay, and my 5-number summary, which I got from that data. Great. And then to review, my 2 boundary values were 7.5 and -4.5. And they would be here and here. And notice I don't have any data smaller than -4.5. So -4 is not technically an outlier. It's just a little bit further than the group. But I do have one data value beyond 7.5, and that's 12. So that makes 12 an outlier. Okay, so 12 is an outlier because it is beyond 7.5. So what did we just do? We found the 5-number summary of ordered data. We found the IQR. We multiplied it by 1.5. And then we added that value to Q3, and we subtracted that value from Q1, and that creates our boundary value. So now we're going to carry on, and we're going to create a modified box and whisker from this. So we have our original data, we have our 5-number summary, and now we're ready to make a modified box and whisker graph. So first thing we want to do is we want to create a number line that's going to contain all the way from our low to our high, and you can go by however many units you want to go by. And again, I would be labeling whatever this variable unit is. Right now I don't have one, but that's where I would put my label for it. And if I had a title, I'd probably put a title there. And what's wise is to first start with your 5-number summary. So I put little tick marks where my L1, where my L, my Q1, my Q2, my Q3, and my high are. And notice I do have an outlier, and I will eventually be asterisking or starring that outlier. Now, very common, I am going to go and make a little box between Q1, Q2, and Q3. So that's like my little house. And then I'm going to, typically, if I didn't have an outlier, I would bring my whiskers all the way out to my low and my high from Q3 and Q1. But since 12 is an outlier, I don't want to do that. I want to only go out so far as data. So notice the last data point before my outlier is the number 4. So that little whisker only goes out to 4. It doesn't go out to 7.5. That's an invisible boundary value. All right, so 7.5 only told me that anything beyond 7.5 was an outlier, so I know 12 is an outlier, and I do make it an asterisk, but my box and whisker only ever touch data, so I'm going to go out for my whisker out to data. And so notice Q1, Q2, Q3, they form my box, and then my whisker values go out to data, and then my outliers get starred or like put with a little interesting symbol so that I can tell it's an outlier. And you don't have to have one. You actually could have multiple outliers. You could have outliers on both sides. You have multiple outliers just on one side, or you could have no outliers at all. So I hope this helped. Modified box and whisker. Let me know if you have any questions.